All right, so um, last week we started with our CSS. We talked about how we can, or what is CSS in general. At the same time, we talked about grouping in HTML, which is what you can use to group other elements together so that you can apply a style to a particular groups of elements on the page. And we talked about different elements you can use like this div, section, header, and so forth like that. But right now, we're only using the div element to group order together. And at the same time, we talked about how we can include CSS on our page by using the inline method, or these are internal or embedded method. And at the same time, we talked about the external method. But while we're talking about the internal and the external, we talked about the CSS rule set, which is a combination of a selector and declaration, which are the properties that you want to change on that particular or the elements that you are targeting on the page, which are inside the body. And again, we started with this our basic selector, and under it we're able to talk about the element selector, but I will go over it again because this class is all about selectors, because selectors allows us to be able to target any element inside the body and apply the style that we want on the elements. It can be 1, 2, 3, and so forth like that. And when are you going to be using the selector? You are going to be using it when you are dealing with embedded or external CSS. But when you are dealing with inline, you're already on the element. Just apply your style attributes and you apply whatever properties you want to change on that element. But I told you inline is not that useful because most of the styling you want to do have to apply to different elements at the same time. Not that you have to be the one that have to be doing copy and paste into each one of the elements to apply the style. And we already talked about you can include your external CSS into your HTML there. So today, we're going to be talking about our selectors like this. Let me disable this AI. I don't want it to be bringing any suggestion. So we're going to be talking about selectors, and as you can see on the page, the first one we have on the list is the elements selectors are like that. And just like what I mentioned last time, this one allows you to select based on the tag name of the elements that you are working with. So on the page, you are using the tag to generate the element, and the name of that tag, you can use it to target elements on the page, and that's what we call the element or type selector. So let me put it there because sometimes you see people calling it type selector, but they are just saying the same thing. So element or type, because you are targeting a particular type, not that you are targeting different types of element. Even though you can target them, that's where other selector now comes in there. But for now, here now, we are only focusing on all the H1 that we have on the page. So whatever you are doing here, it will only affect the H1 that you have on the page. So you are selecting here all the H1 that you have on the screen. So this one will select all the H1 that you have on the screen. And here now we can just change the color to red. So here we are only changing the color of all H1. Please listen, all H1. I did not say the first one or second one. Once you are using the type selector in this way, it's targeting all of them, not just the first one or the last one or the second one that you have on the page. And as you can see, it will look for where we have H1 and it's going to apply the color red on all of them. If it's not H1 that I want to style, then I can go to another element. This one too, it will target all the P that we have on the page, and it's going to give them a background of this blue. So on the page, anywhere we have the P tag, the color or the background color there is going to be this blue, and no other element we have that style, because we are only focusing on this particular type that is on the page there. So we have this background color to be blue, but where are you putting it? We are putting it on the P tag. If I don't want it again on the P tag, I can put it on the H2 and it will switch it, because whatever you have here as the selector, that's where it is going to apply the style. And if you cannot find the element on the page, then that means your styling is useless, because in order for the stuff to work, there must be elements that this thing is targeting on the page. If it's not there, then nothing will happen. And that's why this selector is very, very important, because if you don't know how to select your element on the page, there's no way the style you want to apply on that element is going to get there. It's just like you want to buy something from Jumia, you are living in Loring, but you are putting Oshogbo address. So, it's not making sense. Even though the address there might be valid, but you are not there. So when you get the product to that place, they have to return it back, because you are not at that location there. So the same thing here too. You want to apply your style to the element, but which element? So you use selector to talk to CSS that this is the element, or these are the elements that I want to style on my page, and that's what we call selector. But we have different types, and currently here we just talked about the element or type selector. So the other one that is common here that you always use a lot, you always use this second one here a lot, because it's kind of useful to target multiple elements at the same time. This one with the element type, we're only focusing on one particular element, but with this we can use it to target multiple elements on the page that are not even on the same type, but because they have that class, then we can apply the style of them. Just like normal school, multiple students can be inside a class, but that doesn't mean you are studying the same course. Even though you are attending the same class, but that doesn't mean you are offering the same course in that school. So the same thing here too, you can give class to your elements, and whatever element that have that class, you can target it and style it based on the class that you apply on it. So class is just an attribute on your element that you can give to any element on the page. And when you're talking about the class, you can see that this H1 is having class heading, and at the same time to this LI is having that same class. They don't need to be same type before you can use that class on. So anywhere you know that you want to style the element, they are different, and they need to have the same styling. What you do is just give them class. That's one way. That's still another way of doing it, by using another method. But this is one of the way you can do it here. But how do you start element based on the class that you have on it? So to start an element based on the class, you start with the dots, then followed by the name of the class that you want to target on the page. So this is how to style based on class. For example, here now, if you want to target that heading, we start with the dots, then followed by the name of that class you're looking for. Then here color should be blue, and once it is saved, then can you see it's only these two elements that are going to have the style, because they are the one that have that class. And the advantage of class is that I can just go to any other element where I need this stuff. I just need to give it that class there, which is going to be heading, so the name should match. So save, and if you go down to CSS unit, you see that that one too now is having, so that means our CSS property too have that class. That's the reason why, as you can see, it's having the styling. So with class, you can target multiple elements and apply the style you want on them. And you always use it a lot, because most of the time you want to start different elements the same way, even though they are different elements, but you want to apply the same style on them like that. So it's going to apply the style based on the class. So just like the way we have the class selector, we have the ID selector too. So this is a class selector. This one allows you to select based on the class on the element, like the class attribute. But don't forget, when you're talking about class, one element can belong to multiple classes. So just like school too, you can be offering multiple, like you have multiple courses that you are doing there like that. So here too, my element can have multiple classes. So this one is going to be BG, that's one class. So this one is going to be floats, that's another class, and so forth like that. So this single element here is having these two classes, and I can style it based on any one of them or based on both of them are here, because there must be sometimes you only want the class to apply when there is BG and there is float. That's where all these other advanced or intermediate selector will come in. But for now, we're only focusing on the basic selector there. So we can start based on class, but you can actually start based on multiple classes, not just one. Later on that you combine them. It's only when these two classes are there that you want it to happen, not when one of them is here. So that one we'll be talking about it when we get to the advanced part. But for now, we're only focusing on a single selector, which is a just pick one of the element. So the other one we have is the ID selector, because this one too, you can use it to select an element. You know, this one now is not that useful like the class. No, ID should always be unique. It's just like your matric number in school. So the same thing here too. Whatever ID you want to give to your element should be unique. If one element is using ID 1, then no other element on that page should use that same ID. You have to use something else different from that. So that's the rules that we have there like that. So when you have your element that have ID, you can target it to and style it based on ID. So to start based on ID, you start with this hash symbol, then followed by the ID name that you are looking for. For example, here, let's go back to the page. Do we have any element with the ID? As you can see, this one now is having ID heading. ID heading is not the same thing as class heading. So even though the texts are the same, but they are different attributes. So ID will not target class, and class will not target ID. So that's why you should know how to deal with class. Class start with dot, while ID start with hash symbol like that. So here we want to select the heading, but not class again. Is now ID. And luckily for us, in VS Code, as you can see, it will show you sample of what is going to target on the page. If I do this one now, so heading, you see that it's different. You can see this one is looking for class heading, while this one is looking for ID heading. Even though the name are the same, but they are not doing the same, because this one is starting with hash and this one is starting with dot. Class always start with dots. ID always starts with hash. So here now, color should be red. Only the element that have that particular ID is going to get style on the page, because this is the only place that we have the ID. If we have any other ID too on the page, just target it. As you can see there, this OL is having the ID list. So if I want to target it, hash, then followed by the name of the ID. And here we're going to have background of red, and the color like this is going to be yellow green. Let me use this yellow green like that. So save, and if we go back to the place, as you can see, only that element is going to have the style, because we are targeting based on the ID of the element. So these are kind of like basic styling that you can use. But before we dive into the other one that we have there, I want to talk about this universal selector, because this one too is very important, even though we are not going to be using it every time like that, but it has its own place of using. And just like the name, universal means like a entire stuff. So this one allows us to style everything on the page at once. But you don't just use it anyhow, because you don't want to style. If every element looks the same, there's nothing there, like nothing special again about the stuff. But we have where we normally use it to do some stuff that we don't want on the page. And asterisk is what we call the universal selector. So this one is known as a universal selector, which allows you to select everything on the page. For example, if I just say color is red, you see that everything on the page will just have that same color like that. Or if I just say border 2 pixels solid red, what is this? You're going to know about it later. As you can see, it will apply to everything. What I'm saying, I'm putting line around the element, but not just the first or the second element, all the element. So that's what the universal is there for, and you can actually use it later on with some other selectors to create some stuff, or to limit it to a particular area on the page, or to do the generic stuff that you are going to be seeing later on once we start putting everything together. But it has its own place of usage, but you won't be using it every time like that. But it's very important that you know about the stuff. So apart from this, or this basic selector that we have this other one like this child selector. Now we are entering the sweet part of our selectors now. So what is child selector? Or before I even get to the child selector, we have something called the compound selectors. And what is this compound? It means you are combining multiple selectors together to form another single selector. What you have been doing before is just one selector that you are dealing with. But with this compound, you can combine multiple selectors together to form another single selector. Even though you are combining multiple things, but the result is always targeting particular element or a set of elements, just like the way it's happening with this. But with this compound, you are combining multiples together to form the stuff. And under this compound here, one of them is what we call this child selector. So under the compound, we have this child selector. And what does this one do for us? There, this one allows us to target elements that is inside another element. So for example, here now, if I just do li and the color is red, this thing will do what I don't want it to do. Look at it. Whether you're inside the OL or you are inside the UL, it will pick all the li. But this is not what I want. I only want to style the one that is inside the UL. So that's where this child selector comes in. So this one allows you to look at your element and check, are you inside this element? If you are there, style it. If you are not there, don't touch it. So that's the child selector. For example, here now, if you look at it, I have this P, or I have this H1 here. But at the same time too, I have the H1 inside my div. So what if I only want to select the one that is inside the div, not the one that is outside of a div? You are always going to use this child selector to style your element. And how do you do it? So how do you do child selector? So this is how it works. So you are going to have the parent selector here, and at the same time, you are now going to have the child selector. So this is what we call child selector here. So here, the parent selector will be by the left hand side, while the child selector will be by the right hand side, separated by space. There, as you can see, is looking for a child that is inside the parent, like this. And you can use any of the selector that we've talked about before. So it will always select this child if and only if it is inside this parent that you have here. So for example, here now, that one that I mentioned, I have div and I have h1. So here now, we only want to select h1. Whatever you want to select is always on the right side, but it must be inside what is on the left side. And it doesn't stop on these two. You can continue like that. So I have div, I have form, I have h1. It's still child selector, but the only thing we want to select here is h1, but it must be inside form somewhere. Form 2 must be somewhere inside div. When you are talking about child selector, you are selecting one element that is inside another element. And to do it, you are going to have the parent selector followed by the child selector. But the parent can be more than one, not just two parents, because this one, what it means that this h1 is child of form, and form 2 is child of div. You move from the right all the way to the left, and if you can see them in that way, then you are selecting whatever you have on the right side. The last element on the right, or the last selector on the right, is the element that you want to look for, but it must be inside the one that is on the left. And it doesn't stop with, you can see I'm using element selector here. It doesn't stop like that, so I can just have div and I have so here now I'm looking for class open that is inside what? Div. Look at it. We are looking for any element with class open, but it must be inside div. So it doesn't stop. That's why it is compound. You are combining multiple selectors together to form another single selector. So that's why it is known as a compound. And under this compound, we have this child, which allows you to select one element that is inside another element. So for example, here now, let's go to our page. As you can see that we have multiple H1 on the screen. So let me start my div first, and let me apply background of red like that. So going back to the page, as you can see that all my div now, they have background of red. Again, let's style our H1. The color should be yellow like this. So save, and as you can see, all the H1 on the page, the color is now yellow, including the one that is inside div, because we are talking about all of them. But that's not what we want. We only want the H1 that is inside the div, not any one of them that is outside. So what do we need to do now? We just need to convert it to the child selector. And in order for it to work, we just need to put the div before the H1. So the parent selector will always be by the left, while the child will always be by the right. And once I save this one now, as you can see, this one is still working, but going back up, you see that it's not selecting any other H1 that is not inside the div. Like that. If it is form that you are looking for, so here we can just say the H1 that is inside. Can you see that this one is still working? Because as you can see, the H1 is inside form and form is inside div. So since the H1 is inside form, it's still going to style it. But if you go down, you can see this one now is not working again. Why? Because we are only looking for H1 that is inside form, not the one that is under the div. So if you go back to the page, as you can see, this H1 is inside the div. But the one we are actually looking for is the one that is inside form. And if you scroll up, as you can see, this H1 is under form. That's why it's targeting the element here. That's why you see that it's targeting it. The reason it's having this color is because we can find that H1 under the form. Anywhere, it doesn't care whether that one that period, it doesn't have, but H1 must be somewhere inside. It doesn't need that this have to be under the form directly. It can even be the last one on the list, or it can be the third one inside. It must be somewhere inside form. But later on too, you can actually tell it that it must be the first one inside the form. Those are other selector. But with this one, it doesn't care whether it's the first one inside it, or it's the second one inside it, or the last one. As long as it is inside somewhere there, it will pick it up. But if you care about that it should be the first one on the list too, then that's another selector for that. But for now, we are focusing on the basic one. As you can see, it's still giving us that same color. Even though it is down or it is up, it will always pick it up as long as it is inside form. But once I move it outside of the form, like this, and let me move it outside of the form and see, you see that it's not working again, because it is not inside form, it's inside div. It's not the div that we are looking for. We are looking for the one that is inside form. And once I move it back in, you see that it's working. This thing is very important because you always use this child selector a lot, because the way you arrange the content on the page, you always want to start one element that is inside another element. So child selector make it possible for us to target one element that is inside another element. So how do you do this one now? So let's do some class work. So select all the P that is inside div. So how do we do this one now? What do we need to type to select? Because this one now, this is what you'll be doing. You have the English, but you translate it to the selector. Like for example, oh, this my element is here. Oh, so I need to select this element. That then you now translate that English to a proper selector that the CSS is going to understand. Again, select all the class. What is this? Select all the class open. So all the class open inside home class like this. So select all the class open inside form, select all the div inside form, and at the same time select all the form inside div. They are not the same. The order matters. So select class h1 that is inside form. So now let's see how we can solve all these things. So because you should be able to translate in this thing to a proper selector, because that's what all this word will be coming from your head, but you will now be translating it to a proper selector that the CSS is going to understand there like that. So in order for us to do this, you need to come in. All right, so for the first one is cheap, like that. Let me even start from the cheapest one. So select all the class open on the page. So this one is simple, which is what we started with before. Again, select all the H5 on the page like that. So this one too is simple. So let's do this. So the first one says we should select all the class open on the page. So what this mean is that we have to select that particular class. And you know, it's all of them. So which means we are just targeting that any element, because we don't care. That's all. We don't care whether it is on p tag or it is on ol or it is on form. But later on, you might need to do the one that is or you might need to select the one that is on p only, or the one that is on form, not just all of them. But this one is actually for all the select all the class open on the page. And to select all of them is just by creating this selector. So this one, what is going to do is that anywhere you have class open on the page, it's going to select any of the elements. As you can see, it's not specifying the element, it just said element. But later on, I can actually condition it that it's only going to select the p. I don't just want it to select any one. It must be on the p. So this one now, you see that it's not showing p, because it do not focus on all of them. It will focus on only the p. The p too can be more, than, but anywhere you see p and it has class open, select it. But that's not the one we are talking about here. We are talking about all the class p on the page. We don't care about the element where it's being used. Just select all of them, and this is the selector to do something like that. The same way we are doing it for this, that's the same thing this one too is asking for. But now this one is said select all the h5 on the page. You know, it did not mention class, or it did not mention anything like IDs. No, we are talking about elements. So here now is going to be h5, and it's going to target all of them on the screen. But here now we are diving into the compound, which is the child selector here, because this one is selecting something that is inside another something there, like that. What does this one say? It said we should select all the p that is inside the div. You know, what we are targeting is p, because that is the stuff we are looking for. But now it said it must be inside a particular element. Which element? That's this. So which means here we need to have the div at this place, and this is the one that is going to select all of them that is inside the div, like that. So the same thing here too, we are asked to select all the class open inside home class. No, select, what are we selecting? We are selecting open, but not like the one we have at the top. You know, this one is selecting all of them, but now this one is not selecting all of them. It's only selecting the one that is inside the home class. So which means somewhere here we need to have dot home like this, because it will only pick the one that is inside the class home, but it doesn't care about the element. It can be p, it can be form, as long as that element is having class home. Then inside it, we are looking for another element that now have class open. This is the only thing you want to select, but it must be inside the one here. So we are looking for this, but we're only going to pick it if it is inside this one. If it is here, okay, do it. If it's not there, then just forget about it and let it go. So that's what is there. Let me comment out this one so that this doesn't show all this error or this warning stuff, because we did not put any style there, so it's useless. So again here, we have select all the class open inside form. You get the gist already. So form, then we have the class open. You know, this one is selecting the one that is inside home class, but this one is selecting the one that is inside element form. No, there is difference between class and element. You know, this one did not mention anything like class form. It just said inside form. So we know that we are dealing with elements there. The same thing down here too. We are asked to select all the div that is inside form. So which means form will come first and the div will follow, because the element you are selecting is always the last on the list. But this is not the same thing as this here. They are not the same. This one is looking for div that is inside form, while this one is looking for form that is inside div. So it's not the same like that. So you know when to do it like this or when to do it like this, based on which one you are looking for and where it needs to be like that. So again, select class H1 that is inside form. So how do you solve this one now? You are the one that will solve this. So form and aha. So this is what I'm expecting here, this dot, because these three are not the same. H1 is not the same thing as dot H1, and is not the same thing as this H1. This one is selecting element. This one is selecting class H1, not element again. Once it start with dot, it's not element again, it's class. Even though it's using the name of element, as long as it's starting with dot, that's class. It's looking for, as you can see, it's looking for class. But if it is this one, you can see that it's looking for H1. The same thing here too. This one is looking for ID H1. Anytime this is start with hash, that's ID. Anytime you start with dots, that's class. But anytime it doesn't start with any of these things, that's element. So that's how this thing works like that. So this thing make it easier for us to target the element we want that is inside another element like that. So once you have your design and you only want to style one element that's inside another one, just look at the way you arrange the element, then you know which one is parent and which one is the child that you want to select. And based on that, all the parent selector are going to be here, because you can have parent 1, parent 2, parent 3 before you now get to the actual element. So this is the only thing we want to select here, but it must be inside this parent 3. Parent 3 must be inside parent 2. Parent 2 must be inside parent 1. So if everything is true, then style the child. It will not style all these parent 1, parent 2, parent 3. We are just using them to look for where it is. But the only thing we want to start here is just the child that we have there like that. So that's how this child selector comes in. And at the same time too, we have attribute selector. So you know, ID and class, they are attributes too, but because they are common for us there to use, that's why we have a special way of targeting them in CSS. But what about the other attributes? What if you want to use them? Maybe these our elements that we have here. Do I have input on my page? I don't have input here. Let me go to our form and pick some of the elements there, because you look at it, see that form used to have a lot of attributes there. So that's why I always love to use form, because that one always come with different attributes. So you know you cannot talk to them apart from using attributes, because there's nothing you want to put inside it. You have to be passing attributes to them. Then based on the attribute, it knows what to do. Why is this thing long like this? Are we still in the form? Oh shit, long go. Okay, copy and let me place it somewhere here. So I'm going to have a div with the class my form. That's the name of the class. That's the same, like, you know what I just did now. This is just free SQL stuff. You can see that I started with class. With its ID, I just need to post hash, then my form like that. Anyway, you use dot before the stuff, it will convert it to class. Anyone where you start hash, is to convert it to ID. Then whatever that come before the dot and hash, that's the element. But if you don't put the element, it will default it to div by default. So which means here now, as you can see, generate the element. So instead of me putting div here, I can just do the same thing like this. It's still going to generate div. But if I need another element, then I can put it here. And that's the element is going to generate. Just VS Code stuff to simplify or to kind of bootstrap your element for you easily like that, which is something we're going to be doing once we get to the building of the site, because you don't want to be wasting time on all this. You are focusing on the result, not the code. VS Code should take care of the coding part, the arrangement of the code, but the result is what you are after there like that. And you're going to be seeing a lot of them that will be using later on, because I can even, this one I can create like 3 of them by just putting times 3. As you can see, to get 3 of them. Not that I will have to be doing it one by one. I can be tabbing into each one of them to fill in there. So VS Code come with all these goodies, which we call Emmet. So this is the name of the plugin. You don't need to install it. It's already in VS Code. So it's there to complete your code like that. But let me paste the form, then save. And on our page now, we should have the form, as you can see. So all this form here now, you can see a lot of them, they have different attributes. So what if we want to target a particular, we have input now. So going back to our page or our styling here now, so we want to talk about attribute selector. So this one should be attributes. This one can be combined with compound too, but for now, the simple version is what I want to do. Or maybe I can even use it same, because we normally use it with this other type of selector. I think I will come back into it, because if I don't explain this other one, it's no, I'm talking. No, that's not the way you do it. Though. I'm just writing text, just like the way I put all this one here, like that. I'm separating the stuff. So that's not the way you do it. Though. So, but before I get there, let me talk other days compound here. Let me talk about the OR selector here. So what is OR selector? This one is useful when you have different selector, but you want to apply the same style to them. This is what I'm saying here. Imagine we have H1, so the color is red. We say the color should be red. On the page again, H2, we still want to have the same color. You see that I'm repeating myself with the property. So now imagine that the same properties that I want to type here, which is really long. For example, the font size is going to be 2 rem. The background is going to be blue, or it's going to be green like this. So the padding is going to be what all these things. I will explain them later on. But now look at all these things that I'm doing here. It's still the same thing that I want to do on this element. What I have to do is to do copy and paste. Now imagine I want to do it for like 3 elements, and this thing is really much like it. And this thing is something that is subject to change. It means everywhere that I'm doing copy and paste, I have to be going there one by one to change them. It would be nice if I can just use this thing one, but talk to it that it should apply it on H1 or apply it on H2, or any one of them you can find on the page, just apply it there. So that's where the OR selector comes in. So instead of you separating them like this, we can combine the 2 selectors together. We are going to talk to you that they are separate selector on their own. They are targeting different elements, but you are reusing the same declaration. So instead of us separating them like this, what we can do is to combine them together. So we can use this OR, and to do OR, we use comma. When you say child selector, that's space. But here now, once you separate it with comma, this one is talking about H1 separately, H2 separately, but the 2 of them are using the same thing. What you are doing here is still what we are doing here. Just that here we are not repeating ourselves. So if you need to make changes now, you only do it once. So let me comment this one out, and let's see the problem that we are facing here. Because not every time you are going to use all this selector, you use the one you know is appropriate at a particular time. Not that you have to use all of them. But because you need to know about them, that's why I'm explaining, so that you can pick the correct one at a particular time there. Because 2 of them will work. Just that here now, we are trying to move away from repeating ourselves. If you do it like this, it will work. Not that it will not work. As you can see, it will work on both the H1 and the H2 we have on the screen. But where the problem will come in is when we want to modify the stuff now. So now imagine the background change from this one now to yellow. But I'm only doing it on H1. You see that the H2 one did not change. It's only the H1 that changed. So if I want to and it has to be the same thing. So I have to come here too and update the value. Now imagine you are doing it for different elements. So it means you have to be that thing we are running away from. We see doing it here. But instead of us not doing it like this, we can now use this all selector because it allows us to combine different selectors together, but which are selecting different things, but they are reusing the same properties or declaration here. So with this one now, with this one, as you can see, everything is still dark green. But now if I make changes to this one by changing it to yellow, you see that all of them will change at once because they are just using the same stuff. Not that I have to start going to each one of them and update it. All of this one is looking for H1 or is looking for H2. Please, that command is very important because if you do it like this, this is different. This one is looking for H2 that is inside H1, as you can see. H2 that is H1. But if you look at this one, it will see H2 separate and it will see H1 separate. So once you use comma to separate them, you have different selector, but you are using the same thing on them. But don't forget, it's not just for element. You can use different selector. For example, here, I'm looking for H1 that is inside div, and at the same time, anytime we find the H1. So whether we find the H1 inside form or we find the H1 inside div, I want to apply the same style to them. But they are not the same. They are not the same. This one is this on its own. As you can see, it's only talking about this. And if you come to this one too, it's talking about its own. So they are separate selector. Even though they might be targeting one element, but they are separate selector. And they are reusing whatever you put here at once. Not that you have to separate this one to its own line, this one to its own line. And this one is only useful when you know that they are using the same style. If they're not using the same style, you have to separate them. Because if you don't separate them, they'll be using the same style on the page like that. So this is what we call the all select. As you can see, that one too is compound because it's combining multiple things like that. So we have this all, but the one I actually want to explain is the and, but for now we'll just skip it and go to that attributes for now. But the attribute, we don't normally use it alone. We use it with another selector known as and, or maybe I should just explain that and, but that and is always crazy. That's why I always want to skip it for now till when it is needed, so that at that time it will be clearer than now that we are not really using. And when you're talking about attributes, so this is how to select attributes. So we have the square, then inside the square you are going to have the attribute name. This is one pattern like this. So this is another pattern because each one of them have what they are doing, but these are just the major one like that, but it's go more than this, but these are the major one that we're going to be using for now, but it's go more than that. So what is this one? This one means, as you can see, you are looking for that attribute, but you don't care about the value that is inside it. So here now, go back to the page. You can see that we have this attribute type, but the value of this one is checkbox. So if you scroll up, you see that the type is here. Let me scroll up to the other one. As you can see, the type is here, but the value is not the same. So this one is type email, this one is type text, this one is which other one? Type radio. So when you want to style based on attributes, a particular attribute, but you don't care about the value that is there, that's where this first one comes in. So this one will target any element that have that particular attribute, but it doesn't check the value, whether the value is this, is like that type that we have there now. It doesn't care whether it's of type text, is of type email, to type number, and so forth like that. As long as that attribute is here, it will pick all of them. But with this one, you care about the value that is here. So this one now, you only want to target the one that have value text, or you only want to care about the one that have value this in email and so forth like that. Let's see them in practice. For example, now if I just say type now, so this one, it will look for anywhere we have this attribute on the page. Anywhere we have this attribute type on the page, then it's going to apply whatever you want to apply there. For example, here, background should just be red. So any element that have that attribute, it's going to, as you can see, so you can see that it's applying it here, but it's not applying it in any other one like that. And as you can see, it applied for the email, it apply for the text, but you know the color, the reason why the color don't work for all this one because you cannot put background in them. They are different. The way you style your radio and checkbox, you can't use background to put something at the back. But for all this one that you can type inside, then it means it has background. But this one you cannot type anything inside, so you cannot just put the stuff like that. This one is select, so this is another element entirely. You know, it doesn't have type. It's input that have the type on it like that. Or if you have any other attribute you want to style, for example, you can actually use don't forget ID too. There are attributes or class too. Anything you put inside the square is talking about attributes. So if I save this one too, as you can see, it's selecting all of them because on that page, all of them actually have ID. As you can see, ID, but it doesn't care about the value that it is. As long as you have that ID, it will pick it. And this is where the second one comes in, because I don't want it to just be selecting all the ID on the page. I only want it to select the one that have a particular value. So here now I can just use ID is going to be email. So I'm only selecting any element here that have ID as attribute, and the value there is email. And that's the only one I want the background to be blue. And as you can see, but you know, instead of you doing it like this, we have a simple way of selecting ID. Just use like this. Both of them are doing the same thing. Just that using this one have more power so than this one. This one have more power. As you can see, it is 100. Why this one is just 10? So ID has more weight over this attribute selector. This attribute selector and class, they have the same weights like that. But ID is always the highest because it has more power. You know, you are talking about a specific element. So it's always giving more power than the other selector. It's the one that have the highest power, then followed by class and others. The element have the lowest, which is 1. This ID is 100 for the class, and this your attribute, they are 10. Then for the elements, that one is 1. It has the lowest. And all these things that are very important later on, as you can see, that's 1. And the reason it's very important is because when you're using anyone or when you're using all of them to target the same element, and you're using the same property but different value, which one is it going to do? That's where all this thing will kick in. But for now, we don't need them. We are talking about all these simple stuff. But later on, they are going to come in. That's why it's very important that you know about them. But when we get there, I will explain it better. But this is how you can select your ID in a more professional way than you using this method. But for every other attribute that you care about, like that type now, so just doing it, you see that it's selecting the two of them. But I don't care about everything. Like, it's not everything that I want. I only care about the one with this type email. And once it's saved, that's the only one you need to focus on. Or I only care about the one that have this particular. So I'm not just targeting based on the name of the element. I'm targeting based on the attribute that we have on that element. And it's not just any attribute you have there, just use it and it's going to apply what you want there like that. For example, now email, now if I put required, which is an attribute that means that you must type something inside that box. That's the attribute. So if you try to submit, it will tell you that you've not, can you see? It will tell you that if you sorry, that's what this require is doing, that you must type something there. It doesn't care whether it's space or something must be inside that box. So based on that attribute now, we can now use color red around any one of them that have that particular attribute. But you know, it doesn't have value, and I don't care about the value. So here now, can just say required. But again, too, there's a special way of selecting that one too. But for now, we just use the attributes selector. So anywhere we have this required, what I want to do is that the border is going to be this. So the line, I'm changing the line around that box, which is going to be, it is that gray color. But any one of them, as you can see now, it's going to show the red. So if I want it to happen to the other one, I just need to apply that attribute. And once I give it that attribute, as you can see, it will pick it up like that. So based on attributes, you can target and apply style to that element. Because every time you have to mention the name of the element or you have to use class, you can try different method depending on you. But majorly, you always use the element selector, you always be using the child selector, and you always be using the class selector. Those are the ones you should focus more right now. But later on, you can actually be doing all these one like that. And again, CSS these days it's making things easier for us for that child selector, even though we don't really use it like that because you want to support older browser. So all those child selector, you can actually put them inside each other. For example, here I have div. So inside this div, I can just have h1. So what this one will do is that it will, can you see, it will do the same thing. h1, that is, it will only style this h1 if it is inside the div. But this is a new way of doing it. I will advise you to always go with this the old way for now, because it's not all the browser that support this nesting. We call it nesting here. So yeah, whatever you want it to happen here now is going to nest it inside this one. And again too, I can even do some crazy stuff later on like that. So what am I doing here? Anytime the div is over, but instead of me doing it like this, what I can do is to move it here by just doing div over. So they are going to do the same thing. What I have here is still the same thing as what I have here, but this one is what we call nested as a selector like that, while this one is just the normal way of doing it. So for now, I won't be using all this one, because if you try to check this in on older browser, it will not work. But for all the recent browser, it will actually work if your browser is up to date and the browser has support for nested this thing. But you should always go with something that is accessible. That during those olden days, that time, when you want to do some stuff, not like now that when you want to do stuff at that time, they will tell you have to use a particular browser before you can view that site or before you can do something. Before the NYC said, before you can download some stuff there, they will tell you to go and use Firefox. But now these days, all the browsers are now creating their API in the same way. Well, not all of them, but the API kind of are getting closer, so that when you do something on this system, the way it works here, it will work on the other one. But not everything that works, or sometimes you see some of the element you're using or the color you have seen here is different on another browser there like that. But almost all the Chromium browser, they follow the same pattern, but they don't give you the same UI or the same color. Sometimes they will change the color, and you now say, oh, I applied the CSS, it worked on this browser, but it's not working on the other browser, because some of them handle this thing differently. For example, like this thing, particularly this one, it always different on different browser like that, which is this input and it's of type range. So this is what you can use to have that sliding range like that. So let me copy the address. As you can see, the way it's looking here like that. So the color of this thing might be different when you go to another browser. But all the browsers that are Chromium, because the Chromium browser that looks like Chrome. Chrome is the major browser, but it has engine known as Chromium. That same engine is what all these other browsers too are using. So which means things are always going to look alike because they are using the same engine. Can you see now? Can you see what I'm saying? See that the color is different. So some of these elements, it will look the same, but sometimes it will not, because the way each browser implements their own this thing. I can see that this one is showing blue, but on the edge is showing this gray color. If you go to the normal Chrome too, you check. So, and that's why it's not that kind of easy and easier to style this range here. Other elements you can quickly style them, but this range is not that easy to style. You have to use the engine selector that you are going to be seeing, because there's some engine selector you need to use before it works. You can't just use your own element on the page. So some of these engine selector, they start with this dash dash, like can you see? MS is Microsoft, like that. MOZ is Mozilla, which is Firefox. Again, we have WebKit. This is now all these Chromium engine. So this is their own. So as you can see, you can use this to start this progress bar or to start this one or to do some, can you see the slider thumb, like maybe stuff that you are sliding around. That's what we call slide. Again, to this one too, it's not that easy to style, depending on whether you're on Chromium or you're on this Firefox. The way you style them is quite different. But those are the edge cases that you're going to have there like that. But most of the time, you won't be diving into all this one. You use UI library to change it for you like that. So you're going to be the one that will do some stuff, or sometimes you have to remove the appearance of what is there and so forth like that before the thing will start working. As you can see, it did not work. So not every time some of these elements they don't change, but most of the elements we're going to be working with, you can change. Even the select too, you cannot style it anyhow. So you have to create, if you want the styling to be different from the way it's showing you right now, you have to create your own version, which include HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You know, yeah, now you are not the one that says once you click, it should open up. But element can't just open up on their own. So that means you need to include JavaScript so that once you click your own too, it can come outside. Again, too, this one is what you can see is working with keyboard. And again, if I press escape, it closes. So you have to undo all these things. And that's why people don't like to do it once the browser doesn't implement it. If you want to do it, there's a lot of things that the browser has already taken care of behind the scene that you now start doing it. And again, you need to make sure that it works on all the browser. So, but instead of us doing that, that's the reason we'll be using some UI library later on. Those people have already designed the library down for you. It's not left for you to just use any one of them. For example, here we have this mountain, I think it's mountain UI, yeah. But this one I require JavaScript because behind the scene, it's going to be based on a framework that is based on the JavaScript. Things is always based on one, as you can see, it's based on this React like that. We use it for React. So instead of you creating your component from scratch, you can just use these people component that has been developed. So you fast track the development. What you focus on is the application you want to build, but the UI controls that you want to use for that application, you use any one of these library there like that. So let me open this call. As you can see, they have different this thing. See the checkbox, they have it, but it's a customized, like you can customize it and make it look like you can see the color of this one now. So and the color will always be the same across the browser. Not that this one that is showing blue will now be showing blue, the other one will be showing orange. As you can see, this one is showing blue now. So let's go to the edge and go back to our introduction to this thing, and let us click on this one so that the color of this one is different. So the color is going to be the same across. Not that you start checking everything. These people that design this thing have already taken care of all these stuff. They check it on different browser and they make sure that it's working. Your own is just to call it and you start using the stuff. But what is going on behind the scene, you don't need to care. But again, too, they have, as you can see, they have the file input, which is one you can use to pick the stuff. Like once I click, as you can see, it's open. But you too, you can do this thing, but you know the UI is quite different. And you can even do your own custom one so that you click on a button and it opens it up. Or the input, they have the input too, which is you can generate it using the normal HTML input, but instead of you using normal HTML input, you can use their own so that the color will always be the same across the browser. Not that the edge, if you don't style it, or before you style it, or you are using the default one, you now go to this side and you click on the box. As you can see, in edge, the color is always black. But if you go to this one now, their own is default to blue, or even this one service using black for this. But you can quickly style this one easily. But some of the elements here, you can't just style them easily because it's depending on the way they implement the stuff on the browser. And instead of you fighting with that, we can start using the UI. But before you start using UI, you need to understand the basics because there are some stuff they are doing behind the scene. And sometimes you need to style it according to your own design. Because every time you want it to be blue, sometimes you want it to be the color scheme of that application. So you should be able, and based on the experience you have now, you see, can you see that it's using it like the way we are calling our element. Here now, as you can see, it looks something like attributes are like that. Again, this is the name of the like a tag. So it's not that they are doing new things, just that they are creating the custom one for us to use instead of us building the stuff from scratch. But for now, we always be using all those basic ones because you need to understand them first before you. Because none of them, nobody will be telling you this is tag or this is stuff. They will just use it because they've already assumed that for you to be here, it means you already understand all this thing. That's what we are doing right now. That's going to be all for today. So tomorrow, there, we are going to be talking about units. We're going to be talking. That's not all about selector. This is just the basic one that we need right now. Then we are going to be talking about where's my unit. I put it somewhere here. Okay, this is it. So after the unit, that is variable too. But I think when we are working, we can be talking about the variables are there. But for now, let's talk about the unit. Then after the unit, we start with our properties. So now when you have text, what are the properties you can apply on them? And these are the basic one that you need. So for the background, these are the basic background properties you can use. For the box, these are the basic properties for the position and so forth like that. So where do you need them? After we combine them together like that, we now start building something that combine everything together. Because you won't be using them one by one. You have to combine them. Like the HTML, the CSS, everything will be combined. But in order for you to understand what is going on, that's why I'm explaining them one by one first. So that by the time we are now combining them, or by the time you want to do something, you know what or which one to call. Because not every time you are going to use them, you call them based on what you want to do. That's how it's going to be later on. So that's going to be all.